that the original cause of offending the Lord and falling down from one's position is one's not learning how to properly worship a bona fide spiritual master, one who is trained to offer respectful obeisances and worship to the bona fide spiritual master automatically offers proper worship to the Supreme Lord. Without the mercy of a bona fide spiritual master, even a so called religious man will gradually become atheistic, offend the Lord by foolish speculation, and fall into a hellish condition of life. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur has pointed out that the Purusha mentioned in this verse is Lord Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, who is glorified in the Purusha Sukta prayers. If one is proud of his high social position and enviously thinks that the Lord is also a creation of nature and that there is no absolute entity who is the origin of all beings, then such a puffed up fool will certainly fall down from the one ashrama system and become just like an unregulated animal. Text 4. There are many persons who have little opportunity to take part in discussions about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, and thus it is difficult for them to chant His infallible glories. Persons such as women, Shudras, and other fallen classes always deserve the mercy of great personalities like yourself. Purport. In the previous verse, it was explained that some persons are ignorant of the glories of the personality of Godhead, na bhajanti, whereas others, although aware of the Lord, ridicule him or state that the Lord is also material, avajanati. In this verse, the first class, namely the ignorant, are described as fit candidates for the mercy of a pure devotee. The word dure indicates those who have little opportunity to hear and chant the glories of the Lord. According to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, they can be explained as ye sadhu sangha bhagyahina, those who are bereft of the association of saintly persons and pure devotees. Generally, those who are advanced in the spiritual science of Krishna consciousness avoid contact with women and low class men. In general, women are lusty, and Sudras and other low class men are habitually addicted to materialistic habits such as smoking, drinking, and woman hunting. Therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu warned the sadhus or saintly persons to avoid intimate connection with women and low class men. The practical result of such a restriction is that women and lower class men are often bereft of the opportunity to hear the glories of the Lord chanted by saintly persons. Thus, Sri Chamsa Muni instructs the king that he should especially give his mercy to such fallen persons. Our spiritual master, His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada, was severely criticized in India for giving all classes of men and women the opportunity to take part in the Krishna consciousness movement. Indeed, the caste Brahmanas of India and other persons concerned only with ritualistic formalities were shocked that Srila Prabhupada allowed women and persons who were born in low class families to take part freely in the Vaishnava culture and even become initiated as bona fide Brahmanas. However, Srila Prabhupada could understand that in this age practically everyone is fallen. He saw that if spiritual life were to be limited to the so-called higher classes, there would be no possibility of spreading a genuine spiritual movement all around the world. The mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is so great and the holy name of Krishna so potent that any man, woman, child, or even animal can become purified by chanting Krishna's name and taking prasadam, the sanctified remnants of Krishna's food. In Chaitanya Mahaprabhu movement, no sincere person is restricted from achieving the highest perfection of self-realization, whereas the impersonalists and yogis tend to be selflessly concerned with their individual realization and achievement of mystic power. It has always been the custom of the Vaishnavas to be merciful to all classes of living entities. It is understood that the conversation between the Navayogendras and King Nimi took place approximately at the time of Lord Ramachandra, many hundred of thousands of years ago. But in the Bhagavad Gita, which was spoken only 5,000 years ago, Lord Krishna himself also states that any person, despite his material situation of life, can become the most dear devotee of the Lord by full surrender to the lotus feet of Krishna. Therefore, the fallen people of Kali Yuga should take advantage of the special mercy of the Vaishnavas and join the Krishna consciousness movement to perfect their lives and go back home, back to Godhead. Text 5. On the other hand, Brahmanas, member of the royal order, and Vaishyas, even after being allowed to approach the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, Hari, by receiving the second birth of Vedic initiation, can become bewildered and adopt various materialistic philosophies. Purport. It is said that a little knowledge can be very dangerous. Those who are falsely proud of material social status and who thus neglect to perfect their worship of the personality of Godhead are condemned in this verse. Muhanti am amnaya vadina. Becoming attracted by the sense gratification of high status within the Varnashrama social system, such person became more attracted to illusory material philosophy than to the absolute truth, which is not material. Within the Vedic system, Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas, as mentioned in this verse, are all offered initiation into the Gayatri mantra and are considered twice born or highly civilized men. By studying Vedic literature, chanting Vedic mantras, executing ritualistic ceremonies, and worshipping the spiritual master and the personality of Godhead, such person gradually come near to the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. If one in such an exalted position becomes proud of his status or fascinated by the heavenly material enjoyment that is undoubtedly available to the followers of the Varnashrama system, then one so bewildered return to the illusory material platform of birth and death. Even the highly posted demigods become victims of Maya. Antecedent as described in the first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, Muhanti Yat Surya, in order to justify their illusory desire to enjoy dead matter. Such foolish persons condemn themselves by minimizing the necessity of worshipping the personality of Godhead, Avajananti, and falsely try to give equal importance to the Karma Kanda section of the Vedas, which awards heavenly sense gratification in exchange for the performance of prescribed ritualistic ceremonies. Such bogus rationalizers are described in Bhagavad Gita. Yam imam pushpitam vacham pravadanti avipashita vedavadarata partha nanyadastiti vadina. Men of small knowledge are very much attracted to the flowery words of the Vedas, which recommended various fruitive activities for elevation to the heavenly planets, resultant good birth, power, and so on. Being desirous of sense gratification and opulent life, they say that there is nothing more than this. Srila Prabhupada, purport to this verse of Bhagavad Gita, give a clear picture of the offensive class of men described therein. People in general are not very intelligent, and due to their ignorance, they are most attached to the fruitive activities recommended in the Karmakanda portion of the Vedas. They do not want anything more than sense gratificatory proposal for enjoying life in heaven, where wine and women are available and material opulence is very common. In the Vedas, many sacrifices are recommended for elevation to the heavenly planets, especially the Jyotistoma sacrifices. In fact, it is stated that anyone desiring elevation to heavenly planets must perform these sacrifices, and men with a poor fund of knowledge think that this is the whole purpose of Vedic wisdom. It is very difficult for such inexperienced person to be situated in the determined action of Krishna consciousness. As fools are attracted to the flowers of poisonous trees without knowing the result of such attractions, similarly, unenlightened men are attracted by such heavenly opulence and the sense enjoyment thereof. In the Karma Kanda section of the Vedas, it is said that those who perform the 4 monthly penances become eligible to drink the Somarasa beverage to become immortal and happy forever. Even on this earth, some are very eager to have Somarasa to become strong and fit to enjoy sense gratification. Such persons have no faith in liberation from material bondage, and they are very much attached to the pompous ceremonies of Vedic sacrifices. They are generally sensual, and they do not want anything other than the heavenly pleasures of life. It is understood that there are gardens called Nandana Kanana, in which there is good opportunity for association with angelic, beautiful women and having a profuse supply of somarasa wine. Such worldly happiness is certainly sensual. Therefore, there are those who are purely attached to material, temporary happiness as Lord of the material world. The significant point in this verse is that such bewildered materialists who have become attached to the materialistic portions of Vedas, Muhanti Amnaya Vadina, desire to ignore the supreme proprietorship of the personality of Godhead, who is the supreme enjoyer, Bhokta Ram Yajna Tapsam, and at the same time they wish to preserve their exalted status as followers of the Vedic principles. Such duplicitous person takes shelter of materialistic philosophers such as Gemini, who deny the existence of God as a tangible principle, Ishwarish there, and therefore recommend material fruitive activities as the highest knowable truth. Such so-called Vedic philosophers amount to little more than polished atheists and are therefore understood to be Anishwara Vadina, or those who preach against the supremacy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although foolish materialistic followers of the Varnashrama system desire to maintain their exalted status as Aryans or twice born men, and at the same time neglect the personality of Godhead. It is clearly stated in the Bhagavatam 11.5.3, Stanad Drasta Patanti Adha. Such persons inevitably fall from their position into a degraded condition of life. As confirmed in this verse by the word Muhanti, they fall into the darkness of ignorance. Sometimes such pompous persons even present themselves as gurus. However, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur has pointed out that they are actually laghu or flimsy rather than guru or heavy with Vedic knowledge. It is one's ultimate duty to oneself, Sarvagati, and the personality of Godhead to give up all materialistic activities characterized by karma and jnana and surrender fully at the lotus feet of the Lord. Only the most unfortunate person will consider that there is a higher pleasure than ecstatic surrender at the lotus feet of Gokulananda, the personality of Godhead. Text 6.
Text 6. Ignorant of the art of work, such arrogantly proud fools, enchanted and enlivened by the sweet words of the Vedas, pose as learned authorities and offer flattering entreaties to the demigods. Perfect. The words karmani akovida refer to those who are ignorant of the art of performing work in such a way that there will be no future bondage. This art is described in Bhagavad Gita. Yagyarthat karmano anyatra lokoyam karma bandhana. Work must be performed for the satisfaction of Vishnu. Otherwise, work is the cause of future bondage in the cycle of repeated birth and death. The word stabdha, puffed up by false pride, indicates that although ignorant persons do not know the art of working properly, they do not inquire from learned devotees, nor do they accept the advice of the Lord's own men. Being infatuated by the fruitive results offered in the Vedas, such murkhas or fools think we are learned Vedic scholars. We have understood everything perfectly. Thus, they are attached to such Vedic statements as apam somam amrita abhuma. We have drunk the soma juice and now we are immortal. Akshayam ha vai chatur masya yagya yajina sukritam bhavati. For one who executes the Chaturmasya sacrifice, there is inexhaustible pious reaction. And yatra noshnam na sitam shyana glanir napi arateya. Let us go to that material planet where there is no heat, no cold, no diminution, and no enemies. Such foolish persons are unaware that even Lord Brahma, the creator of the universe, will die at the end of universal time. What to speak of materialistic followers of the Vedas who jump like frogs to the different celestial planets, seeking the highest standard of sense gratification? Such bewildered
655.
Such bewildered Vedic scholars dream of frolicking with the Apsaras, the gorgeous society girls of the heavenly planets, who are expert in singing, dancing, and in general stimulating uncontrollable lusty desires. Thus, those who are carried away by the heavenly phantasmagoria offered in the Karma Kand section of the Vedas gradually develop an atheistic mentality. Actually, the entire universe is meant to be offered to Lord Vishnu as sacrifice. The conditioned souls can thereby gradually elevate himself to the eternal kingdom beyond the hallucination of material sense gratification. However, being puffed up by false pride, the materialistic followers of the Vedas remain perpetually ignorant of the supremacy and beauty of Lord Vishnu. Text 7. Due to the influence of the mode of passion, the materialistic followers of the Vedas become subject to violent desires and are excessively lusty. Their anger is like that of a snake, deceitful, overproud, and sinful in their behavior. They mock the devotees who are dear to Lord Achyuta. Purport. Ghor Sankalpa refers to ghastly desires, such as thinking, he is my enemy, let him die. Due to the mode of passion, waves of lust overcome the conditioned soul, who then becomes furious like a snake. Such a person, filled with pride and arrogance, cannot appreciate the humble efforts of the Lord's devotees to distribute Krishna consciousness. He thinks these beggars worship Lord Vishnu to fill their bellies, but they will never be happy. Such a materialistic rascal cannot appreciate the transcendental status of the devotees of the Lord, who are personally protected and encouraged by the personality of Godhead. Text 8. The materialistic followers of Vedic rituals, giving up the worship of the Lord, instead practically worship their wives, and thus their homes become dedicated to sex life. Such materialistic householders encourage one another in such whimsical behavior, understanding ritualistic sacrifice as a necessary item for bodily maintenance. They perform unauthorized ceremonies in which there is no distribution of foodstuffs or charity to the brahmanas and other respectable persons. Instead, they cruelly slaughter animals such as goats without any understanding of the dark consequences of their activities. Purport. False pride is certainly not complete without sex indulgence. Thus, lusty materialistic householders are not attracted to worshipping saintly persons, but rather worship their wives as a source of constant sex pleasure. The mentality of such condemned persons is described by the Lord Himself in Bhagavad Gita 16.13. Idam adya maya labdam imam prapshe manoratham idam ashtidam api me bhavishyati punardhanam. So much wealth do I have today, and I will gain more according to my schemes. So much is mine now, and it will increase in the future, more and more. Generally, materialistic householders consider themselves to be very religious. In fact, by learning money, by earning money to support a band of relatives, him, they consider themselves to be more pious than the irresponsible sadhus who do not struggle to maintain family members. Worshipping the material body, they are contemptuous of the humble brahmanas who are generally not very advanced in economic development. They consider such so-called beggars to be unworthy objects of charity and instead perform sacrifices only for the enhancement of the false prestige of their own family members. Madhvacharya has stated in this regard, Pekshaya vai harim te tu bhutva yagya patanti adha. In spite of proudly considering themselves to be great performers of religious ceremonies, those who neglect the Lord and his devotees certainly fall down. Such foolish persons sometimes bless each other by saying, May you be blessed with the wealth of gorgeous flower garlands, sandalwood pulp, and beautiful women. Men who are controlled by the nature of women become exactly like women. Materialistic women are uninterested in the devotional service of the Supreme Lord and strive for their own selfish happiness. Therefore, they eagerly take service from their husbands and become most discouraged if the husband prefers to serve the personality of Godhead. Being lost in such a fool's paradise, both husband and wife mutually encourage each other in temporary happiness. They do not like to speak or hear about the pastimes of the Lord, but prefer to discuss their own families. Still, the devotees of the Lord, being mature in the mode of goodness, are always ready to act mercifully toward such conditioned souls, who are just like vain animals. When the devotees of the Lord preach that human beings should not slaughter animals, materialistic householders are very often astonished and inquire if it is actually possible to subsist on a vegetarian diet. Thus, being completely ignorant of the material mode of goodness, what to speak of spiritual knowledge? Such condemned materialists have no hope beyond the mercy of the devotees of the Lord. Text 9. The intelligence of cruel minded persons is blinded by false pride based on great wealth, opulence, prestigious family connections, education, renunciation, personal beauty, physical strength, and successful performance of Vedic rituals. Being intoxicated with this false pride, such cruel persons blaspheme the Supreme Personality of Godhead and His devotees. Purport. The attractive qualities exhibited by the conditioned soul originally belong to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the reservoir of all attractive qualities. The moonshine is actually the reflected effulgence of the sun. Similarly, the living entity reflects for a brief time a particular quantity of the Lord's opulences. Not knowing this, atheistic persons become intoxicated by such reflected opulences, and thus blinded, they condemn themselves more and more by criticizing the Lord and His devotees. They are unable to understand how they have become abominable, and it is difficult to prevent them from going to hell. Text 10. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is eternally situated within the heart of every embodied being. Still, the Lord remains situated apart, just as the sky, which is all pervading, does not mix with any material object. Thus, the Lord is the supreme worshipable object and the absolute controller of everything. He is elaborately glorified in the Vedic literature, but those who are bereft of intelligence do not like to hear about him. They prefer to waste their time discussing their own mental concoctions, which inevitably deal with gross material sense gratification, such as sex life and meat eating. But in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says, Vedayasya sarver aham eva vidya. The goal of all Vedic knowledge is to know the Lord, who is the absolute truth. Although this purpose of the Vedas is clearly revealed both in the Vedic literature itself and by the self-realized acharyas, foolish people cannot grasp this simple truth. They prefer to cultivate knowledge of illicit sex by discussing their sexual partners and experiences. They also eagerly describe and recommend to their friends the best restaurants for eating meat. And they are fond of glorifying drugs and liquor by elaborately describing the drunken and hallucinogenic effects of their sinful experiences. The materialistic sense gratifiers eagerly call one another on the telephone, congregate in clubs and committees, and enthusiastically go on hunting.
अभी से हो गया या ले जाओ
हाँ ये ले जाओ
जब ठीक है
ये ले जाओ
जो देने वाला दे दीजिए
माता जी उधर
हाँ हाँ माता जी बनाइए
टमाटर काट के दे दो बेटी हो गया वैसे ये रहा इसमें
क्या तरह भी दे देंगे ऊपर रख लीजिए क्या
में डाल दो टमाटर को
अच्छा है कि छोरा बच्चा कुछ समय पे याद आते हैं
खाना पीना हो गया
हाँ खाना पीना होता रहेगा
कुछ लिया कि नहीं
वो लिया ना जगह का थोड़ी का राइस
बस
थोड़ा सा दे दिए बस
उससे क्या होगा
हो जाएगा जी वही इतना आपको तपस्या आपके तरफ तो नहीं किया तो इसलिए ज़्यादा
पाँच मिनट कभी कुछ नहीं खाते
तपस्या है कभी भोग आत्मा हो गया
तो व्रतधारी हो
इसको रख लीजिए ना इधर तुलसी अभी लगा डालेंगे ना उसमें
इधर है
हो जाएगा
कुछ नहीं सब
उठा लेते हैं वो कपड़ा दे दीजिए अच्छा बाद में देंगे
हो गया
तो कितना रखे हैं
हाँ
भक्ति ते माला चंदा तुम्हें दिया हो दिया हो गरम भोग तैयार है।
सुनो, हरे कृष्णा। कहाँ गया? దైవమే సఖిరాను నమో విష్ణువే హరే రామ
Hare